I heard an attorney crack a joke before. He said, if you die healthy and you die quick, you don't need the living documents.
Yeah.
But
Hello and welcome to the Retireable Podcast. I'm Mike Wallace.
I'm John Sauger.
Hey, John, how are you doing today?
I am good, Mike. We're having a little technical difficulty issues on a little bit of recording, and my camera feeds are off. But I'll figure it out.
Oh, you're looking a little blurry here, John.
I'll get it figured out.
That's right. Good thing that people are listening to it, maybe not watching the video. Then,
Well, some people are going to watch the video.
Exactly. But you're
I think the reason I'm blurry is your glasses.
Oh, is that what's happening?
Yeah.
Okay. I can't see anyway, so that would make sense. So yeah, as we're recording this, it's at the end of 2025, but there's some things changes that are happening. So I just want to kind of discuss that a little bit. Is I have been working for Financial Services of America for 34 years, right out of college, and I have a longtime assistant. Her name's Jackie Zawicki, who actually has worked for me for 23 years. That's retiring at the end of the year.
That's great.
Yeah. So I have not had to ever face that in my life, you know. And so a lot of my clients like her better than me.
Absolutely.
You know? She's
when you've been working with her longer than some families have been married.
Yeah, no, exactly right. Yeah, my kids have grown up with her, and you know, I've been married for 30 years. So yeah, I mean, it's been a long-standing relationship, but it's kind of cool, and we're excited for her, and we're gonna throw a nice retirement party, etc. And we've already hired somebody that she's been training, and so that's been great as well. And
that's hard though, right? That's the tough part, is just trying to get somebody to how can you summarize 23 years of work and try and train somebody? That's got to be tough.
Yeah, well, it is kind of cool in one respect, is that at least that she's there to be able to train, you know. There's so many jobs that I hear, like my wife is a principal, and if her secretary retires, they just get a new secretary the next year, right? They don't have the budget to like have someone train somebody over that period of time. So it just kind of on the job training when it comes down to that. So to be able to do that, and then more importantly too, Jackie is going to work part-time for at least a few months for us from home. So she'll work a day or two a week. So that'll help. What we're finding is a lot of the normal stuff, the day-to-day operations are fine. You know, she'll be able to learn that stuff because she's working on it every day. But the hardest part of that stuff is, in any of our professions, there's a lot of the one-offs. You may run into it, 5 times a year. But you've been doing it for 20 some odd years, right? So it's just when it comes up, it. And how do you train that stuff? How do you teach that kind of stuff?
Exactly.
And so it's been interesting, but but I also had another team member this year. You did it as well, John. And so just the training part of it, and then just
exhausting.
Yeah.
It's like you said, it takes months, and it ramps up and increases your productivity massively. But on the other side of the coin, while you're doing the training, it doesn't feel like it's going to get to that point.
Yeah. You got to take the time. You're right. You got to take the time to do the training. So it's been great that we've had Jackie to be able to train Jenny, and I have Katie on my team as well. And of course, we do got to take some of that responsibility ourselves for sure, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So and I think that's that fine line. It's a learned behavior as far as how to organize and train and do all that type of stuff. So that is not a skill set a lot of people are born with.
Yeah.
To be a good trainer and to be able to teach and do that. So it's good that you're able to go through that and get that taken care of.
Yeah. No. So it's a interesting and unique position to be in. I have retired team members before, but I'm not my personal assistant. So that's going to be. It's going to be a definitely a learning curve when it comes down to a little bit of that stuff. But looking forward to her for the opportunity for Jenny, and also I'm looking forward that she deserves to retire.
Absolutely.
Happy for her and her family, so she gets to do that. So that'll be fun.
We just hope she has a good retirement plan.
Oh yeah. Maybe she knows a guy.
Yeah, somebody. I'm available if she
needs to.
Yeah,
Okay, we'll work toward that.
Sure.
All right, so our subject today is we're going to talk a little bit about estate planning and actually some of the tax planning aspects of the estate planning and we've had lawyers on our podcast before. We actually had Ben Vader from the law offices of Ben Vader, who talked a little bit more about the intricacies of having an estate plan. But we wanted to kind of talk again more about just some of the basic definitions and some of the importance of that with a holistic plan as well. Okay,
Sure.
so why don't we talk, what is a basic, like an estate plan? What's included in an estate plan, would you say?
So again, we're not giving legal advice on this. We're talking about it.
We're not lawyers. We can't give you legal advice.
So we're talking about this from what we see where we're at, and essentially, the estate plan is taking care of kind of three things, right? It's taking care of if you get sick and can't make decisions, if you need help doing anything in that regard, that's part of the estate plan. What happens when you pass away, and where does it get you, right? So you're trying to take care of those things. A basic estate plan is generally some sort of will or trust, right? More often than not, it's trying to figure out what's the best way to avoid probate. Mm-hmm. Then it's more some living documents like some powers of attorney, patient advocate, durable power of attorney, et cetera, or guardianship forms in that situation, living will, and depending on what you need in that situation. So it's generally going to constitute a lot of those components. And simplistically, every state is a little bit different. Every place is a little bit different. So the way you're doing an estate plan might be a little bit different than what we're referencing. But generally, you're looking for what happens at end of death, and what happens if I can't make decisions. End of death then does go to two parts. Do I have beneficiaries on it, or does it not have beneficiaries on it? And what do I have to do? So it's generally some sort of will or trust. And then your powers of attorney, patient advocate, et cetera. So your living documents.
Yeah, and so it is important to have a lot of those documents, and there's many different reasons. And part of the reason for having, let's say, a trust instead of a will is if it's set up properly, oftentimes it can avoid probate. Okay, and so why is it important to avoid probate? Oftentimes probate can be expensive and oftentimes time consuming as well. So if we can set up a plan to avoid some of that stuff, that's really what we're trying to accomplish on more of those documents. And the part of the reason that a lot of people have the living trust in general is so let's focus on the reason that you have it in the first place. For older people, it's more about passing of assets. Sometimes to have somebody estate planning in general, if you have young kids, you want to make sure that you're signing a guardian, for them, that you're choosing, that they're not wards of the court, and that their assets can be held for them. So that's maybe not be to go to, for example, if you're leaving money to a minor, you're letting someone control those funds so it doesn't become their money at age 18, for example, but it can be used for education, support, health, and maintenance while they're alive. But sometimes you put provisions in there, like we did for our children, is that it's going to be held in trust until at least they're 25 years old. Okay, sure. So that it can be used, controlled by the trustee or the successor trustee, for their care until a certain age. Okay, and then even sometimes people put provisions in there that they'll get part of 25, maybe let's say, a third of it or half of it at 25, something at 30, something at 35, depending on the size of the estate, et cetera, the way that you set that up. But for the younger kids, I think it's really important to make sure that you have, some type of control. Now, a lot of times, though, when we're dealing with the market that we deal with are retirees or people that are, already retired, or, again, being in this business for as long as we both have, end of life decisions. And so now it's to make sure that it's passing or not stag, to the next generation or whoever that may be.
Sure.
Okay? So the trust will help do a lot of that stuff, and a lot of the language in there. And I have a sample estate plan here. I don't need to get for the video. We're not going to go too much into it, but the purpose of this and this very thick document is a lot of the ifs, ands, or buts. There's a lot of things we don't know what's going to happen, and so a lot of that can be controlled through the trust. And so, give us some examples of if A happens first, B happens second, C happens third, it's probably not going to be that big issue, but sometimes D, E, or F could happen. So
sure.
Give me some examples of some of the things that you know, that the trust will help
I think
in that case.
I think the thing, the way I always picture it, I mean, you hear the running jokes, you know, the conversation of you don't get out of this life alive, you know, you don't get, you know, I mean, you hear that, but in that conversation, we do know we're all going to go. We just don't know under what condition or what circumstance. And so, like you said, if A plus B equals C, then yeah, you didn't really necessarily know a lot. And that's what a lot of people feel. Oh no, this is going to happen. I only have one child, or I only have one. Okay, but here's all the other things that can happen. What if you have a prolonged illness and you have to spend some money on your care? Or what if there's a prolonged illness and you don't have the ability to make decisions? What if you're leaving money to a family member and they're going through a divorce or a bankruptcy, or there's all kinds of like weird things that come. Not, it sounds weird saying it, but there's what the design behind it is to do is to say, this is who the parties are that I want it to get to. Mm-hmm. I don't know how it's going to get there because I don't know their situation. I don't even necessarily know my situation. I know I'm more than likely going to have whatever I have left over is going to these people. Give me the documents to give them the ability to get it as fee-free, as hassle-free, as easy as possible. Right. Yeah. And so some of the examples like I gave, like a divorce. Okay, well, if they're going through a divorce, if you have money and it's going to one of your heirs, let's say it's going to your son and your son's going through a divorce, is your money supposed to follow the bloodline? Is the person that they're getting a divorce with, is that someone that you wanted to get? I mean, you could see where you can now get into layers of complications on stuff. And that's on when you're gone and you can't give an opinion.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So that's where the estate plan is really, really important. If you're gone, they can't ask you, you know, Mike, what did you really mean here when you wrote it, when you said it this way? Did you mean for it to go this way, or did you mean for it to go the other way? Well, so the estate plan is trying to cover that when it comes to assets.
Well, and there's so many other circumstances, like you said, you know, that's just one example there. But, you know, if God forbid, a child predeceases you, you know, they have provisions in there.
Sure.
Where do you want it to go to? Do you want to go to the other children?
Sure.
Or do you want to go to the grandkids?
Sure.
You know? And then if the grandkids are minors, you know, then we have provisions for that as well. Special needs children. Okay. You know, that's unfortunately we're seeing that a lot, or even individuals that may have been, healthy, but they may became disabled, and so they may some of their benefits. Yeah. You know, so we don't want to jeopardize any of their government benefits, you know, and so there's a big reason to have that estate plan to take care of all those ifs, ands, or buts, and it comes down to some of that stuff too. So I guess, you know, in summary, with just the estate plan itself, and what our attorney usually recommends in that case, you know, is a living trust, is to be able to control a lot of those ifs, ands, or buts, you know, because if you were just to put a direct beneficiary on something, and you didn't have a contingent, or you know, what people used to do is put, like, you know, their kids' names on a bank account. Okay. Yeah. And yes, that's an easy thing, but if they get in a lawsuit and get sued, or they're in the middle of a divorce, they can count those assets, right? And so we don't want to jeopardize the ownership of some of those assets too.
Well, and the other part though is talking about this, and again, most of what we're talking about are the minority situation, or the hey, you're gonna go this, you're gonna go this, it's gonna go here, and it's gonna go there. Think about it now. Almost double the complications, because so many more families are a blended family now.
Yes.
You know, people are getting, you know, they're getting remarried later in life and they're blending a family or something. This one has 2 kids and this one has 3 kids, and now we have a blend
one together. Yeah.
Yeah. And how does that go? And they were married, you were married 10 years before you passed away, or you were married 30 years before you passed away, or you were married 3 weeks, but you know, all that blended conversation, and that changes, right? We had a family that she had her trust, he had his trust. They then had a joint trust because they had been married for many, many years, and they had and it was like, okay, almost all of their assets were the joint trust, but they still had original stuff from before they were married that they kept. And it got complicated, because then you had this family had control of this thing and part of this thing, and you don't want the fighting, so you want the good estate planning to try and avoid it. Again, you don't know when you're going to go over no condition, but you don't want your family to have to deal with stuff. And this is a gift, right?
Yeah.
Estate planning is not always necessarily for you, the person doing the estate plan. It's a gift for the people that are left behind. So you can say, this is what I had, this is where I want it to go. Do what's in your best interest, right? I mean, just simple comparison of the probate process. If somebody has to go through probate, there's a cost. You probably didn't want that money. You probably knew who it was going to. You just didn't realize you were giving money to everybody else in the probate process. So that's the estate plan is trying to avoid that when it comes to assets.
Well, and a lot of it is to control the unknown, like you were talking about earlier. The issue is we don't know what's going to happen and when, right? And so if you have a husband and wife, for example, and you don't know if something's going to happen to somebody 2 years from now or 22 years from now.
Correct.
We don't know if it's going to be something that's going to be quick or something that's going to be long and drawn out. Okay. So we don't know if there's going to be medical decisions that need to be made. We don't know if there's going to be additional financial decisions that need to be made that someone else has to make them. So we have to take care of all of that in one place. And it's kind of to give maybe not the best example, but there's a reason that we have insurance, right?
Yeah.
The bottom line is we pay in case we get in a car accident, or we pay, in case our house burns down. And the odds that our house is going to burn down is, and think about it, look, I paid $1,000 a year for my house, and it's a less than a 1% chance, right?
Yeah.
And then you may pay whatever $1,500 or $2,000 to get an estate plan done, but what are the odds you're going to die? 100%, right?
39% at some point it's going to happen.
So to have all those documentation and obviously to make sure to have all those ifs, ands, or buts, it just seems very important. And more importantly, with that stuff too, a lot of that, you talk about the state laws. All the laws are different in different states.
Yeah.
But there's certain things that even a spouse can't have access to in our country, right? And so we want to make sure that you have that language in there for that reason as well.
Well, and what you're getting to there is the separation a little bit of the end of life, what happens, and then the living. Right. When you're alive, using the spouse as the example, if you, Mike, have an IRA, your wife has no access to that until she becomes a beneficiary, and you have to do something for her to become a beneficiary.
Yeah.
You have to pass away.
Yeah.
And so even though it's both of your monies, you've been married, all these years, like you said, even though it's both of your monies, it's in your name. And so the court looks at it as it's just your money. The laws look at it, and the financial companies look at it as just your money. So that's where we need the living documents to go, wait a minute. I'll use myself as an example. I want Mary to have every single right. If something happens to me at any point, I want her to be able to step in and make the decisions that are best for us or her or the family and all the things we've worked on together.
Yeah.
And that's what the living documents will do. Because again, you don't know when you're going to go or under what condition. I heard an attorney crack a joke before. He said, if you die healthy and you die quick, you don't need the living documents.
Yeah.
But you can't control that's going to happen.
Yeah. So, well, and when it comes down to that, sometimes, we're talking about let's talk about the first part of the living documents, is what they call a power of attorney, financial power of attorney.
Sure.
Okay. And there's other documents accompanying what they call ancillary documents that are part of that as well, that allows people to handle certain things. But the issue really is you're allowing somebody, in both of our cases, let's just say our spouses, to be able to make financial decisions on our behalf if we're unable to, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But the thing is, if you don't have those documents, you have to actually go to court to become a conservator or guardian, to be able to make financial decisions. And so that's why you want to make some of those decisions, or be able to name somebody. And then, of course, usually you're going to name a backup, and whether it's a child or whether it's another family member or anyone else outside of that, to be able to help you make those decisions if you're unable to, and that becomes important.
And when you look at it, you mentioned the power of attorney for finances, power of attorney for assets. You have a power of attorney for healthcare, right?
Yeah.
You potentially have a guardian. You potentially have a conservator. You have all these different things. It's interesting when you think about it. There are a lot of places out there that'll just say, oh, you can sign up here and you get this document, or hey, you can come here and we'll do this document for you. But there's so many different moving parts. Like for example, some of them are like life and death. Like, who's making a decision in front of the doctor while you're in the hospital? Well, you're perfectly healthy and fine. You just can't make your own choices. Well, that's not that document anymore. It might be a different document, right? Mm-hmm. 2 years down the road, it's not life and death. You just have dementia. You might not be using the same document. Well, we want to deal with finances, but now we got to talk to the doctor. Well, those aren't necessarily the same document, right? There's not one document that covers everything. So this is where estate planning gets a little more important for the living documents, is you need to constantly be updating these and making sure, do I have all the documents I need for this? Essentially, if I can't make a decision, I want the person I need to be able to have all the rights that I can.
Yeah.
I can do all these different things. I want them to be able to do the same thing. Whatever the documents need to say to do that, right? That's pretty easy because we're not attorneys. But we have to go see an attorney for them to go, well, it's not as easy. You need 37 pages on this one, and you need 42 pages on this one, and we need to kill a lot of trees to do a lot of this paperwork for you. But that's what you have to do to make sure you have what's fitting the current laws.
Well, and a lot of that, again, is giving people authorization to be able to make those decisions.
Yeah.
So like, so you talked about the power of attorney for assets, but even the power of attorney for healthcare. We
Sure.
have in state of Michigan here, the HIPAA authorizations,
Yep.
where basically you cannot share anybody's medical information with anyone, not even a spouse,
Yep.
without their express permission. Okay. And so oftentimes we'll sign the HIPAA authorizations, and when we go to see our doctor,
Sure.
or, if you're healthy enough when you go to the hospital, you can do that. But here, if you're by ambulance, you're not going to be able to sign that document, right?
Or if you're not,
or if you're in a different state, or whatever that may be, you're in a car accident somewhere. And so you want to be able to make sure that you have those documentations that not only, the HIPAA authorization itself that allows somebody to make medical decisions, because let's just say you do have a power of attorney for healthcare, and you allow someone to make those decisions, but then you don't have the HIPAA authorization. So how can they make medical decisions for you if they don't have access to your medical records, right?
Right.
So I think you made a good point, is that a lot of these documents are kind of intertwined.
Yeah.
Because sometimes too, we may need to make financial decisions, but we may need to make financial decisions based on their medical condition, right? And so you need to have authorization and make sure that you have a lot of these documents that can handle all those different things.
Well, and I think this type of a conversation, when you talk about it, that most people listening to this podcast, I'm sure you've heard of the terms estate planning. You've heard of stuff, and the thing we would say on this is if you've not done anything, it gets real easy to procrastinate.
Yeah,
reach out to us and we'll help get you pointed in the right direction, because if you have anything whatsoever, you have any assets, what is it in Michigan? If you have more than a certain amount of assets, you have a potential probatable estate. It updates every year what that number is, adjusts. But if you have, and it's not a large amount in Michigan. I think it's $19,000 was the last notification of like how much if you have if you have assets totally more than that. Is that correct?
I think that is it. I'm not exact. I don't remember. That's the last I saw.
Yeah. So I think that number
might be updated.
Okay. Yeah. Years ago it was 16,000. It was 18,000. We know that number adjusts. Okay. Let's just use 20,000 as an example. Well, if you're thinking about it, most people have more than $20,000 in a car, let alone you have assets. You then will hear people, well, I was just going to do this, or I was just going to do this. All we have best laid ideas, all the best laid plans. Again, we hear people all the time. They all make sense until something goes wrong. And that's what estate planning is assuming something's going to go wrong. That's how it's going to protect you. And so when we're talking about this, we're not saying, hey, you have to do this, right? It's a hard conversation, because if you talk to somebody about, like, let's say home and auto insurance, when you talk to them and you say, you can't say to somebody, you're going to be in a car accident, your house is going to burn down, like you were talking about earlier, because most people don't think that way. They go, oh, that doesn't happen to me. Subconsciously, they're not. But it's like, no, other people get in car accidents. Other people's house burns down. It's not going to happen to me. I guess I'll get this insurance, but I'm never going to use it. You know what I'm saying? But it does happen, right? As time goes along. And so the estate plan is that insurance of, hey, if things go weird, if things go anywhere different than A plus B equals C, if anything changes at all, any variable, the estate plan protects you. And so when you're listening to this, if you've done nothing, reach out to us.
Yeah.
If you've done something and it's longer than a few years old, I would get it reviewed, right? And I'm not giving you a recommendation on that. That's just my own opinion. I'm looking at it going, boy, I see so much different type of stuff. But
Yeah.
talk to
Well,
someone.
and I think that's what's important is, we deal with an attorney's office that will do a complimentary review of their estate plan for clients of ours. So it is a good thing to, to look at.
Sure.
And you're right. They say every about 5 to 10 years, if you have an estate plan,
Sure.
it's a good idea to have it reviewed. And because there's just law changes that are out there too,
that you might not be aware of.
Yeah.
That we're not aware of. Right.
Exactly right. So it is, we want to look at all that stuff. And I think too, to make a point though too, is why it's important is a lot of it is just what the instructions are that if you are, let's say, a successor trustee, or you are a power of attorney for someone else, right?
Great point.
Is the fact that now you have a legal responsibility to carry out their wishes, right? And so now, you've talked about, offering a gift. I'll just give an example of a living will. If we've had to be in that situation, and my mom passed away. That's been a little over 30 years ago now, and we've had to make those decisions of, okay, what is life sustaining, what is sustenance, and what makes her comfortable, and everything else. And bottom line is, if you have a document now with the evolution of the living will, which basically specifically names, what that end of life decisions would be, you're not making a decision for someone now anymore, right? That person has made those decisions for you, and you just have a legal obligation to carry those out. And so it does take the burden off of those individuals as well.
Yeah. And you're not picking somebody you don't like. I don't want that to sound bad, right?
Yeah.
When you're saying taking that burden off people, you're not going, well, I have 4 kids and we like that one the least, so we're going to have them do it, or we trust that one the least. Or you're picking someone going, we think they have the ability and the skill set to do this. We want them to handle this for us.
But they have the instruction manual now to do that. Yes,
exactly. Exactly. The other part with this that I just think is just so vital to think about with people. Again, it is, we talked about it with other parts. I've heard it as it said estate plan, but boy, it's planning, right? It's an action verb. It's constantly, if you put it on the shelf and let it collect dust, it might not be up to date and adjusting and doing things. And there are attorneys that are doing estate planning all the time. And then there are attorneys that are lobbyists that are making sure that things are up to date and up to speed. And then there are financial companies and all these moving parts that have their own attorneys. And now you get a bunch of attorneys in a room and they're talking about stuff, and laws will change. And so you're right on that update, on that change, making sure that game plan is organized properly.
Well, and that making sure that everything is put into the trust properly too. With the estate plan, and that becomes the attorneys that we deal with, what they call funding instructions, to make sure that it is put in there. Because it's kind of like, we talk about the house, the contents of the house. If you don't have everything attached to the you could have the document itself, you could have the legal document, but if not everything's put into there, then you end up going to probate anyways. Right. So there's a lot of moving parts, and we don't need to get into that today. But I just want to make sure that we kind of discuss that as well.
Well, I think in this conversation for the estate plan, the summary is it's a document that we almost all need. I can't give legal advice on this, but you need to at least have addressed the answer and make a decision one way or the other, right? Mm-hmm. If you have one, great, but you might want to get it reviewed. If you don't have one, great, reach out. Either way, what's the way to reach out to us? How do we get on?
You can call our phone number, 1-800-977-9292.
You can reach us at the website at fsa1.com.
And I'm Mike Wallace.
And I'm John Sauger.
And so you have the ability to even contact us, one of us directly. You can go to our website, actually even schedule a meeting if you'd like to discuss this further, complimentary.
Sure,
so we'll
absolutely
be happy to discuss this a little further with you. And John, I guess that there's so much more we can even talk about with that. Maybe we'll do another episode, because we didn't even talk about the tax planning aspects of the estate plan.
Or like we said, you started bringing up some of the unique ones, the special needs situation. Boy, there's so many other types of estate planning, that the living will, the pour over will, the last will and testament, the
charitable planning.
Boy, there's so much that we can really dive into on this. But this is a good starting point, I think, for that conversation.
All right, so let's talk about our next segment then, John. We talked about the basics there of the estate plan, but the next thing we're talking about is what we call our holistic happenings. And as a holistic planning firm, we want to look at things through many different lenses. And so, yes, we talked about estate planning today. We've talked about tax planning in the past, the financial part of it as well, but kind of looking at it, whether it's the insurances part of it, but putting that all together into one different plan, not just the investments themselves. That's important, but, looking at it in the holistic planning. And so we run into things with the prospects or the clients that we deal with all the time. And so, Joe, what have you ran into recently that you like to share, John?
So it's interesting because you have these conversations, like we said, we talk about this all the time. Literally just yesterday, I was had a meeting with a family, and they're at this spot of life as far as we cannot age in this house any longer, and we need to start thinking about it. And so we had some conversations, and they've been talking about it with their family, and the one child was like, okay, I'm going to buy the house from you. And I was like, okay, well, that's our answer, John. And then they dove into it and found out, well, yeah, what that person was thinking was they were just going to take over the house, and that was just going to be their portion of their legacy. I was like, well, inheritance thing.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, no, we need to live somewhere. And it was like, well, no, you can live here until you pass away. They're like, no, we can't live here until we pass away. That's why we can't handle the house anymore. It's 3 levels and all, and so that part of the conversation. Then another family member was like, well, I'll buy it. Well, they're like, okay, well, you have to get a mortgage on this. Well, I'm going through a divorce. I probably can't do it for a few years, and they're like, well, that doesn't work with our time cycle. We're in our mid 70s. We're ready to go. And so we're having some conversation, and you have to have the conversation on it. What I talked to him about is a little bit differently. And I said, okay, well, we have to have some conversation. First off, there's the legal side of stuff of not wanting to cause conflict with the family, right? Let your estate plan, let your financial person, let somebody else be the bad guy in this situation. Hey, you can't afford to give it to one of the family members. You need to sell it. Let us tell them that if you're afraid to say that or whatnot. If so-and-so can't get a mortgage, well, you need to sell it. You're not land contracting. You need the value out of this based on their situation, right?
Yeah.
So we can have that conversation. But then the other part is they're kind of going, families are going back and forth. Well, what's the best thing to do? I'm trying to do what's best for the family. And one of the things I pointed out to him was, I said, and I asked them both bluntly, I said, okay, wife, if he dies and you stay in this house, no, I'd have to move. I can't handle it. Husband, if she dies, no, I'd have to move. I can't handle it. Okay. Well, you're both going to go at some point. Why don't we go now and go somewhere? You guys are decorating. It's the end of the year. They're decorating for the holidays. I said, you guys are decorating for the holidays. Would you like to have a place where you decorate for the holidays with memories of each other? Or would you like to go into that place by yourself after the other one is gone? And they both kind of looked stunned, and they said, wait a minute. We want to go together. I said, well, we've made our answer. We made our decision then. Now let's start talking about how we do it. And that's where the holistic planning conversation comes in, is sharing with them, saying, okay, we have all these different moving parts. We got to know what's going on with the estate plan. We got to know what's going on with the insurances and selling the house. And are we downsizing? What's the tax consequences? It's all those other moving parts that we can talk to them about.
Yeah.
Right. But that part of the conversation, I think, is really, really important from a holistic side. If that makes sense.
No, I think those decisions are, it's amazing, especially when you have these families that they know they have to make some of these hard decisions, but you want to make what we were talking about earlier is you want to make decisions while they're still of sound, mind, and body, and like you said, or where they have to make a decision because they have to, not because they want to any longer, and so now it's just a matter now of putting that together and making the decision while they still can.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what is best for them. And yes, we have to consider the family, but really they're our clients, not their kids. Right.
Yes,
and so we have to, so sometimes we have to make some of these decisions and help them
out. Absolutely.
No, I think that's a really good example there, John. And so I appreciate that. And so I think, again, it's all parts of that. And that's what's great about working with, an advisory service like our firm is that there's a lot of little moving parts that, you may never think of, that they can bounce ideas off us that we're happy to help with all the time. And we have people that come into our office all the time asking, we'll call them oddball questions, but they're unique situations to them. And so, and we can help in all scenarios. And sometimes we have to use some of the technology to do some of that stuff too, but oftentimes it's just They just want a conversation.
Yeah.
Which is
Just
good.
trying to communicate. Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
So that's a great place to end there, John. Again, this is the Retireable Podcast. They can get a hold of us again through our website, fsa1.com, or our phone number.
It is 800-977-9292.
Again, I'm Mike Wallace.
And I'm John Sauger.
This is the Retireable Podcast. Have a wonderful day.
Investment advisory products and services are made available through FSA Advisors, FSAA, a registered investment advisor. Annuity and insurance products are offered through Financial Services of America, Financial Services of America, FSA Health Insurance Agency, doing business as FSA Insurance Agency, FSA Tax and Accounting, and FSA Advisors are commonly owned and operated by FSA Marketing Incorporated, FSAM. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. The insurance products offered by Financial Services of America FSA are not subject to investment advisory requirements. This podcast is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual's situation. FSA. A is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. Chartered Retirement Planning. Counselor and CRPC are trademarks or registered service marks of the College for Financial Planning in the United States and/or other countries. The information and opinions contained herein provided by third parties have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by FSAA.